I've owned this wonderful Volvo V40 for 15 months at this stage, and something I've neglected to do, bizarrely, is a road test. So here we go. First thing you notice when you hop into the Volvo and go for a drive is just the level of comfort. It is ridiculously smooth and ridiculously comfortable. We've got leather seats, heated, air conditioning, climate control. I mean, if you're looking for a long distance cruiser, this thing, I don't think it can be beaten. It is incredibly serene on the road. Now, having said that, of course, the stereotypical image of an old Volvo is that it's for pensioners and that it's slow and that it doesn't handle particularly well. But, of course, this model, with the S40, of course, the saloon, and this, the V40, they really did redesign and, I suppose, recategorize Volvo as cars that people can actually drive and people can get the most out of. This thing handles incredibly well, considering it's about 74 foot long. So you can really throw it into corners very, very precisely. Not a lot of body roll. It's lovely to stay. We actually got a corner coming up here. And we can just feed it in like that. Catch a little bit of the white line there. Absolutely fine. I mean, if I was doing that in a 940 or a 760 or something, it probably would have ended up in the field. One area that this car doesn't particularly excel in is city driving or town driving. It's not designed to, so I can't really hold that against it, but you do notice when you're cruising through towns and cities and trying to navigate small, tight streets, obviously the size of it, because it's flipping massive, doesn't help you. The visibility as well can be a little bit dodgy. There is plenty of glass, but then when you start looking back, now I haven't got the rear headrests in place because I was doing a bit of heavy lift. I was moving a few bits around, so to take the parcel shelf and rear headrest out to fold the seats down. When they're in, you can hardly see anything out the back, and of course these big chunky headrests here, which can't be removed, they don't help either, especially when you're trying to park. If you're in situations where you're going to look over your shoulder, you're coming across this, and that can be very, very annoying. Also, in towns and cities, it drinks fuel. Now, it certainly isn't the most frugal car, let's say, that you could ever own, it being a 1.8 petrol automatic, so it does mill through the old jungle juice. But of course, it's a lot more well suited to long distance cruising. So if you're on motorways or long stretches of A or B road, you're probably going to be okay. I mean, according to my little trip computer here, I'm currently averaging 35.2 miles per gallon. But that is after me doing quite a lot of motorway driving at the weekend. So if I was to mill this thing through towns and cities for the next day or two, that'd drop to around 29-30. Now, for a car of this size and of this weight, 29-30 probably isn't disastrous, and 35 is actually pretty good. But in these times of ridiculously high fuel prices, it does take quite a lot of money to keep this thing on the road. It's not just on fuel that this thing can bite you in the pockets as well. Here in Ireland, any cars pre-2008 with big engines like this are subject to extortionate tax costs. This thing cost me €670. Yeah, 670 quid, almost half the, in fact probably more than half the value of the car when I bought it, just to tax it on the road, just to make sure that it's road legal. It's just extortionate amounts of money. And as well, I recently got an insurance premium renewal quote, and that was of about 100 quid from last year. So to park the finances then for a minute, let's open this thing up on the open road. So we're just coming out of a town then, we've got a nice stretch of country road here. We're doing 80 kilometres now, 50 miles an hour. Depressing the accelerator here, and I just felt it go up a gear there. And I mean, it definitely moves, it really does move. And when it moves, it feels lovely and planted. The steering is nice, not too light and not too heavy. It's pretty much perfect. You always feel a responsiveness through it. There is a little bit of wind noise coming through this window. Now, I'm not sure, and of course around the front of the car, I'm not sure if that is a design issue or the fact that this window and door up here leaks a little bit. I think this car may have been broken into at one stage, either deliberately or maybe the keys were locked in it and somebody had to come out and prise the door open, because there's a tiny little half a millimetre gap up here, and when it rains heavily and you're driving into it, it leaks. So I think there's a bit of air rushing through there. So we're now approaching a stop sign here. Let's drop the anchors and see how it performs. Brilliantly. I haven't done that actually many times in my ownership of the car, thankfully. I haven't really needed to. Of course, you never gather the speed up on one of these things to actually need emergency braking, because pensioners never drive that quick, do they? So that was reassuringly brilliant, that actually. One thing that can frustrate is this car's, I suppose, reluctance to mill up and fly through the gears. I mean, it does if you put the foot down. There we go, now we're moving. But, I mean, if you're just pulling into a junction or pulling out of a junction, you just want kind of relatively quick, serene progress, you do have to stamp on the loud pedal to get that. If you just gently tap it, you're just going to remain in the same gear, and that can be very frustrating. I haven't owned, in fact, this is the only car I've owned with an automatic gearbox. The gearbox on this is fine, there's nothing wrong with it, it just perhaps needs a little bit more tempting to get up through the gears. Ride quality is absolutely wonderful, as you'd expect with a big, heavy car like this. These leather seats cushion you very nicely. I've heard a lot of people don't actually like leather. I do. And of course, just gives the car another level of class, doesn't it, really? Another level of feel. We've just traversed there a railway bridge, and I mean, it's just lovely. It's floaty, without being sort of unresponsive. I really like the way this interior is laid out as well. We've got all the switches and the switch gear sitting straight in front of me here. Of course, Volvo being very safety conscious, we've got a huge big red triangle here for the hazard warning light switch. And I mean, you don't really have to take your eyes off the road that much for anything. You've still got your peripheral vision, of course, too. One thing, though, that Volvo, very surprisingly, have neglected is fingertip controls for the radio, which I'm very surprised about. In the Peugeot 306 I own, there's a little, it's broken, but there is a little radio control stalk here, just behind the steering wheel. And there was a Renault Clio that I owned, a very early Mark II on the 99 plate, and that also had fingertip controls for the radio. They also didn't work because it was an aftermarket stereo, but that's not the point. Anyway, I'm just surprised Volvo, with their safety-conscious minds, didn't think of fitting onto this car. Safety-wise, though, I mean, this thing is, apart from that, very, very safe. We've got a front airbag here on the steering wheel, we've got a passenger airbag there as well. We have got Volvo's SIPS system, the side impact protection system, and we've also got airbags, I believe, on the side of the seats here. So for a car that was designed in the mid-90s, that's pretty high-spec safety. Actually, funnily enough, we've just passed an S40. I believe it's a late 90s S40 as well. It's been sitting there for many, many years. It's a shame it's silver with alloys as well. I'd love to go and rescue that at some stage. The switch gear too is also very, very easy to navigate. We've got little dial and knob controls here for the heating. For the climate control there as well. We've got air conditioning on this particular model and heated seats, and all those buttons are well within my fingertips here. With the seat set to my height. We've also got the little information centre there, which gives us readouts relating to your average miles per hour, average miles per gallon. The info centre also shows you the current outside temperature, which is 17 degrees, very balmy indeed. The miles that you've done and the miles left in the tank, which according to this is 95. I have to say, having owned this car for the last 15 months, it is probably up there as my best old crap car collective buy. It's mechanically never, say never, let me down. There were a few little issues with the rear brakes. I think this one on the passenger rear had a bit of an issue where the caliper was seized onto the disc. I only noticed it when I was heading into work one day, actually, so thankfully it was only 10 minutes away from the house, and I managed to go back and swap it with the 306. But, you know, actually going out driving places, doing all the miles I've done, it's never left me stranded anywhere. It's been remarkably solid. In my ownership, I put it through one service, which was around October or November last year, and I also had the belts done as well because they hadn't been done. So one thing I love about this car is the fact that it comes with a huge folio, a huge portfolio of service history, a big massive folder worth of it. As far as I can tell, every single penny that's ever been expended on this car, whether it be repairs, services, even the tow bar on the back, has all been accounted for. I've got receipts for pretty much a lot of it, and I love having that peace of mind about a vehicle. It has wormed its way into my heart, I have to say, despite the fact that it's astronomically expensive to run and big and cumbersome when you're trying to park. Yeah, I don't know, I just feel like I'm part of it and it's part of me, but, you know, I mean, I'm probably going to have to think of getting rid of it, to be honest, but just because of the fact that it's so astronomically expensive, you know. I could get a car that gets me from A to B, of course, minus the luxury and minus all the little added bits and pieces, but I mean, I can get a comfortable car that can do relatively long distance cruising, which is going to be a lot cheaper than this. I don't need a 1.8 petrol automatic estate. You know, I'm not an antique salesman. I'd love to be, but I'm not. I'm not a geography teacher, I'm not a window cleaner, I don't need all that space. Oh, what have we got here? Oh, we got an Almira, that's an early one, isn't it? Oh, a 96, oh, yes. Oh, that was lovely. That's annoying though, because I took the memory card out of the dash cam yesterday so I could load it onto the computer. I haven't seen an early Almira in yonks. Oh. Anyway, yes, sorry, where was I? I was talking about the reasons why I don't need this car, and there is, of course, plenty of them. So I think with the thinking cap on, I think this car's going to have to go, unfortunately. I mean, I do love it to bits, but I'm going to have to let my head rule my heart. One very, very minor criticism is the indicator noise, indicator relay noise. It's really flipping quiet. Sometimes you'll be going along the road, and if you've got the radio on, or if it's, let's say, raining or a particularly loud road surface, you won't even notice you've still got them on. So how does the Volvo perform then in its natural habitat? I hope that lorry gets out of the way, and it has done. Fair play to you. Here we are on the motorway, so let's get the foot down here. We're going slightly uphill, so progress is going to be stalled ever so slightly. The lorry is pulled back in front of me, but I'm going to overtake him here. Visibility, thanks to the mirrors, when you're looking over your shoulders to locate your blind spot, is pretty good, even though this pillar is pretty much level as to where I sit up because I'm quite tall. So that is 70 mile an hour bang on, and apart from that bit of wind noise that I mentioned earlier, it is just serene and comfortable, and I know this thing would sit at 70 mile an hour all day long. One feature that I haven't had in any of the cars I've owned previously, because they've all been pretty awful and pretty basic, I've loved them but pretty dreadful, is cruise control. And when this car eventually goes, I'm going to find it very hard, I think, to do long journeys without cruise control. I love it to bits. Another thing about this car that I love is the massive amounts of storage space. You've got a storage bin here in the middle. We've got storage there that will fit an iPhone perfectly. Obviously, whoever was working on Volvo in the mid-90s knew that they'd have mobile phones that would be about that big, or, well, that one I'm filming you on is quite a bit bigger than that, but it fits perfectly in there. Got a little slot here next to the information centre and trip computer. That's perfect for one of these little fold-up wallets. Sits in there wonderfully. Got a nice little tray under here, that's great as well. We've got door bins, although they are actually disappointingly small. We've got like a little cut-out section here that you can put coins and little oddities in. We've got a huge cavernous glove box, and we've also got a little storage bin down here with a little slidey lid, and what on some models would have been an ashtray, but it's not on this one because it's felt lined. It's got a little no smoking sign in there. We have little pockets here on the seats, which are lovely and handy. You can put old receipts. Like I've got parking tickets and stuff in there, just stuff that you never quite get around to binning. Up here then we've got our vanity mirror with lights. I have to say, build quality on this thing, it's really, really rugged. It just feels flipping solid. Nice soft touch plastics in here, and obviously little lashings of fake wood. But it just feels really, really well built. I know this car was used quite ferociously, let's say, by the previous owner. Just coming off the motorway here, and the cruise control has been switched off, so just let it roll into this side road here. Because there's little tears on bits of the leather and a few marks and stuff around the car. Having said that though, of course it's an old car, so there are going to be a few issues. The windscreen wiper here, the mechanism is worn here on the driver's side, and that is one of the reasons why it failed its NCT last year. Didn't get it in for the retest, and then there wasn't a date for months and months after, so it's booked in for this November. There is quite a loud knocking noise coming from the suspension. Now, I don't know if it's bushes or shock absorbers. I think it's bushes, simply because I can't see any mist of oil coming from the shock absorbers, and there's no uneven tyre wear that I can see either. These the front tyres are relatively new on it, so I've got a feeling it is potentially bushes that have gone. It's a heavy car, and I did read somewhere on the internet that these things eat bushes. And as well, the driver's side rear window has developed a bit of a fault. I'll show you now after I've gone over this bump. It's actually completely jammed in the mechanism now. Yeah, it was opening last week, So not really going to mess around with that too much in case, I don't know, something happens. It sounds as if the window regulator motor is kind of spinning, but maybe the glass has come off the rails or something's broken in there. I hate removing trim pieces and I hate doing door cards. I've had to do a few of them over the last couple of years and I hate them, so I'm not going to go near that. The boot is cavernous, it's flipping massive. You could literally host a golf tournament in the back of it, it's huge. Think about nick that line from Quentin Wilson, actually.
And in the back of the estate, there's room enough for a small golf tournament.
I mean, I haven't moved an awful lot with it. I helped a friend move house there last year with it, and that was really easy. Just threw everything in the back of it. I think it was 3 trips, and this Volvo made it the easiest 3 trips ever. You can fold the seats, so you get a completely flat load bed, and that is just absolutely wonderful. So that then concludes my road test of, so far, my most favourite vehicle that I've purchased. And yeah, I'm going to say it, in my life. What have I had? I've had about 13, 14 cars in the 8 years since I've started driving. The majority of those over the last couple of years, and I've really delved into this world of Crap Car Collective. The more I drive it, the more I live with it, which I have done over 15 months, the more I love it. But recently I've just noticed that I've put an awful lot of money into it, and there's going to have to be more money spent on it to keep it going, to keep it road legal, to keep it in good nick. And to be honest, I could spend that money on loads of other things that would bring me, you know, more satisfaction and I get more value out of. So I think this car is going to have to go, unfortunately. I mean, thinking back, I haven't actually put an awful lot of this car content, Volvo content, on the channel. And there's one main reason for that. My life with it has been really uneventful, which I suppose is a compliment to this car. So yeah, you know, if you see a certain car that I own on the channel, there's not a lot of content around it. It's either because it was crap and I got rid of it quickly, it was extra crap, or because it's just been simply reliable and really easy to live with, which is exactly what this Volvo has been. That's it then for the road test of the V40. Hope you enjoyed. Please like, subscribe to YouTube, follow me on Twitter and Instagram, and there will be plenty more old Crap Car Collective content coming soon. Thanks for watching.